Good morning, everybody. I'm Nigel Walley from the RLBA, and I'm joined by Simon Lumb this morning. We were meant to be joined by Sally Holdway, who has had a family emergency this morning, so we are going to be covering her slides. Not as well as her, no doubt, but she's hopefully going to join if she can towards the end. So I'm going to share the slide. We are recording this morning. That's the bit of things I meant to say. We are, and just to let you know, and we will be making the video available to people to watch after if there's other people in your organisation who you think might want to see it. So I'm going to share the screen.
And I think, Nigel, as well, it's fair to say Sally was our ace in the pack with the conveyancing background. So we both feel slightly exposed to intelligent conveyancer questions. So go easy on us.
That's true, yeah. So the reason we're here, so clearly the RLBA represents the UK logbook industry. And as we all would have seen at the Ministry of Housing consultation that was announced the last few weeks, a significant part of that, as far as we're concerned, was the MHCLG endorsing both digital property logbooks in their proposed new system for governing the buying and selling industry, as well as endorsing the use of digital upfront information packs. And we're actually going to touch on both of those things through the course of the day. And as we said in the setup for this session, the RLBA obviously is responding in detail to MHCLG about the consultation, and we're putting a submission which we are going to make public so people can see it and read what we've submitted outside of the consultation. We are also, as a result of the consultation, now working closely with the Law Society on rewriting the conveyancing protocol to accommodate digital upfront information packs and property logbooks. And that work is ongoing with the Law Society. We've made a submission already into the consultation on the protocol changes, which again we're going to make public. We're going to be issuing a practice note for estate agents and for conveyancers as a result of this call, and as well as circulating the slides, there's be a detailed follow-up note to this which contains all of our thinking around both those things. What we're proposing to do today, as part of that, is threefold. I'm going to just do the big picture of logbooks, because there's some context things that we really want people to understand about the digital property logbooks. Simon and I, then I'm going to present Sally's piece, and Simon will back me up as we try and do a better job than Sally, who, as Simon said, is actually the conveyancer on the team. Sally is the buying and selling lead for the RLBA. So this presentation is as much hers as the rest of us, so bear with us. Sally's company also is currently working at the front end, the sales end of logbook distribution. And then Simon is going to follow up and focus on the buying end of how logbooks fit into selling and buying. And then I'm going to do the wrap up. What we've done in the presentation, you'll see, is we've been collecting the frequently asked questions about logbooks. And so there's a section at the end of each of this presentation where we'll pause for questions. We have questions on the screen, which are from our collected things people ask us all the time. But feel free either to ask questions as we go. Very happy to take a question in the middle of the slide. Just if you click it, Simon will shout out if he sees a hand go up if I've missed it. And then at the end of each of those sections, we've got a Q&A. Feel free either to put your hand up, or if you're throwing questions into the chat, Simon will flag it up to me as questions, and we can address each of them as we go. And then what we'll do, as I said, we'll summarise at the end and circulate all the documents, the answers in a document. So first off, big picture. As I say, I chair the RLBA. For my day job, I run property logbook company Chimni, and I'm going to do the big picture stuff. This is the other stuff we need people to know about logbooks, other than the buying and selling specific stuff. A little thing about the RLBA: there are 8 companies in the RLBA. Of the 8 companies, at least 4 have been commercially active for between 5 and 10 years. So one of the things we need people to understand is that the logbook companies are live, we are selling, we're in the market. For the varying reasons I'll explain in just a minute, this is not a market that's waiting for MHCLG permission to launch. But we think between all the providers, there's about 500,000 logbooks in the UK. You'll see later on I talk about how many of those are official logbooks and are on the register, which we'll talk about, and we'll explain the distinction between those. But we think it's about 100,000. So this is an industry sector that already exists, and what we're talking about is how does the buying and selling industry exploit what's happened already with what we've built. The The big vision for the property market across all the logbook companies is that every single home in the UK should have a secure digital record with key data on transactions, building work, maintenance, certification, all of that kind of stuff. So our target market is 28 million homes between the 8 companies. So this is every single home should have one, irrespective of whether they are approaching a buying or selling moment. Within that context, you'll see we talk about logbooks being under the control of property owners. A logbook is an asset that's owned by the owner of the property and gets given to the new owner of the property as it sells. So they are a tool and a companion tool for the owner of the home. And you'll see also we talk about them being increasingly connected to government data and systems. So this is not a dead piece of information. A logbook is a live living app, a companion app for the life of the home, and increasingly connected via API connections to every single data source that is out there available. And the other thing we'll talk about is a logbook's ability to output something to an industry sector that wants it. And obviously the thing we'll focus on for the majority of today is being able to output an upfront information pack and pass it to people who want to see it, an estate agent, a conveyancer, etc. But there are other industries that we're working with, and I'll explain what they are in a minute. But from this live living app, a logbook should be able to spit out outputs, what we call packs, support a variety of different activities. And then the final thing, which is a big important one for us, is that a logbook is actually a digital asset. Now, the concept of digital assets is reasonably new in law. It's something that the Law Commission has been looking at for the last 4 years. Within the property part of that debate, what we flagged up to the Law Commission is that a digital property logbook is a legal asset, and it needs to be recognised in law, and it needs to be recognised in the documentation used to effect a transaction. And that concept of this thing having legal recognition has been a big plank of our work alongside the Law Society. So that's the big vision. A quick European context. When we first started in 2018, the UK was probably 3 years ahead of Europe. We are now probably 3 years behind Europe. The EU has gone absolutely mental for logbooks. The EU itself, since 2020, has been funding a huge amount of research across Europe within the European versions of the BRE, research institutes around property, within a lot of the universities. So there's been a massive amount of policy development in the EU. That policy is now bleeding through into law. There is a thing called the EPBD, the European Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, which is all about how they get their homes in Europe ready for net zero in the future. And within that, they're mandating that every home needs to have a journey towards having a logbook and a thing called a BRP, which is a building renovation plan, a plan for updating your home. And the RLBA, for our sins, even though we're not part of the EU, we sit on 2 different advisory boards for 2 pan-European projects looking at the role of logbooks supporting government policy. The EU has said that all public data needs to be made available to a homeowner via them. Their vision for EPCs links logbooks to EPCs umbilically, so that all of that building data, performance data, construction data will flow seamlessly between the 2 things. And we're now at the point where across Europe, property logbooks are mandated in 3 countries, France, Germany, and Ireland, for sale. So you can't sell a home without a property logbook in those countries, and that's increasingly the route by which they're taking it. So when we talk about logbooks in the UK, the logbook standards we'll mention, they have been aligned. We've been working with the EU now for about 4 years on aligning standards. They actually came to us, and we had a big symposium in London with all the EU policymakers in January to align standards for logbooks and standards for how they're used in policy. So there's a much bigger European context for it. We get asked a lot what's in a logbook. And we talk about our 3 kinds of data. And this is something that's important to understand. We all know that we are operating in a world where a vast amount of government data on our properties is being turned into open, interoperable data, which is absolutely correct. And so all the logbook companies, we are working to ensure that we have access to all of the publicly available property data. So things like land registry data. And we're very excited this year that the RLBA is working with the land registry on 2 different integration projects, sharing the local land charges data directly into logbooks, and a project we've just kicked off with them sharing the register extract data straight into logbooks. And the broad premise there is that a homeowner should have the equal access to any bit of publicly held data about their property, equal with a conveyancer or an estate agent. And the logbook is the tool which is increasingly being used to deliver that data to it. So increasingly what we're seeing is the logbooks sit at the middle of this connected group of API feeds into all these government data services. But that's just the publicly available data. And by that, I mean data which by law has to be published. There is another section of data, what we call the restricted property data. And this is really important to understand. This is data that should only be given to the homeowner. And there is a huge amount of property data out in the market that is only intended to be shared with the homeowner and with regulators. And we have been working on the concept of a logbook holding the ID that proves that that homeowner is who they say they are, and they have permission to access that data. And that increasingly is going to be a mechanism by which logbooks have access to all this restricted property data. And we just started trialing Trustmark and NCS data. And what that is, if you're not familiar with Trustmark and NCS, that if you have solar panels put on your house, or if you have a heat pump or anything like that, any of those new energy savings devices, they have to be registered with either Trustmark and NCS. So they have a massive database of what they call those low carbon tech installations. And for the first time, we've been pushing Trustmark since 2018 for this. They are now sharing data with an RLBA registered logbook. And they're doing it by validating the logbook against something which I'll show you in just a minute, which is the National Logbook Register. And so for the first time, we have this process where logbooks are accessing this restricted property data and using their logbook as an ID to access the computer systems. And that's massively important, because that's not data that anyone can just go and get. Only the homeowner can have that. And you'll see that we'll be talking a lot in the next few months about the concept of self-sovereign data. And this is something that Sally's been working on a white paper that's coming out soon. And the idea of that is that the homeowner should have both control and decision-making power over who gets to see their data during a transaction process. And so increasingly, rather than asking a conveyancer to go and get data for us, we will have the data readily available, and the homeowner will be able to unlock it from their logbook and share it with conveyancers. And then the third kind of data is stuff that's only in the logbook. It's stuff that the homeowner has. It might be maintenance records, boiler service records, etc., etc. So what we're doing in that instance is we're working at how to standardize as many data sets as possible, and so that we can share it in a standardized way. So there's a massive amount of data. And what you'll see on those panels is that some data sits in various of the columns. So for instance, land registry title details by law can be shared in public. Full listings, etc. can't. You'll see that planning records are in the publicly held data. Building control records are meant to be private only. And so this also flags up. There's a lot of abuse going on in property data that the RLBA is working to stamp out. There's a lot of data starting to swill from the restricted area into the publicly available area in contravention of GDPR principles. And so you'll see as this concept of open interoperable property data takes off, one of the things that the RLBA will be championing is actually self-sovereign data. The idea that actually not all of this data, just because it can be made public, is meant to be made public, and we need the homeowner given permission through their logbook to do it. So, and what you'll see within that is that logbooks increasingly are shifting from holding PDFs through to holding API feeds. So we're in the middle of a shift in how logbooks hold data and access data. Then the other big thing we want you to know is the areas we're working with. Obviously, today's session is all about buying and selling. But the thing we need to flag up is that the RLBA has got 5 different work streams going on. And today we're talking about one of our work streams, buying and selling. And yes, in buying and selling, we're going to talk about the seller's legal pack, with the upfront information pack. We're going to talk about how and when logbooks get set up. We'll talk about the data we've been pulling in from the land registry. And our target outcome, which we're talking to MHCLG about, is that every single transaction should result in a logbook. Either a new logbook being created, or if a logbook exists already, that logbook being made available to the new owner. And that's an absolute target. Every single transaction has to result in a logbook being handed to the new owner of the property. The RLBA members are doing a lot of work in new build, and new build is much easier to understand because they have a huge amount of data and documentation they're meant to hand over to new buyers. So what we've done is standardize the concept of a handover pack and what has to be put into a logbook and what doesn't. And we're working on some of the more sensitive stuff around what's the legal record that has to be handed to a new owner on what a building's made of. And this is kind of some of the post-Grenfell golden thread stuff that we're picking up. That the regulatory requirements now for a new build developer to be handing information to their new owners on what materials they've used to construct it, and also something which is coming up, which is the circular economy stuff, which is how much of this home, what's the carbon usage in this home? How much of this home is actually reusable if the home gets knocked down, things like that. So there's a lot of regulatory stuff, particularly, as I say, post-Grenfell for the new build, that the logbook industry is picking up and helping to standardise across it. And our target is an easy one: every new home to be given a logbook. And we've seen in France and Belgium, they started off mandating logbooks in the new home sector. So that's quite a hot one, the new home sector. Lettings and rental is we've done least work on, although we're working with the TLIC, the Lettings Industry Council, on a landlord's compliance pack idea. We have actually trialled logbooks for landlords in Birmingham last year, with 2 of the logbook companies working with Birmingham Council to look at how logbooks can support the new aspiration for regulatory regimes. And obviously the long-term utopian outcome we're looking for is that every landlord has a logbook which is connected to the local authority licensing regimes, and in a utopian world connected to a tenant app as well, so that data is moving between the relevant parties from a logbook really easily. We're beginning to do lots of work with local authorities. We've been working with MHCLG on their new digitised planning process, and the aspiration there is for a homeowner to be able to press a button and submit a planning application straight from a logbook. And the data standards have just been created, and the RLBA is part of the trial group within that. Simon's been working 2.5 years on supporting the government's Help to Buy schemes, and we're now...
Feels longer, Nigel.
And so one of the things that MHCLG, actually, we don't know why they don't shout about this, because it's brilliant. We are giving logbooks connected to local authorities to people who are buying homes initially under the first home scheme, but soon to be the shared ownership scheme. So if you buy a home under a government scheme that gets benefits, you are required to take a digital logbook with that, and that logbook has to be connected to local authorities. And so it's kind of a win-win tailored there. Our long-term aspiration is that councils become one of the big drivers of logbooks, so that if you connect a logbook to a council services platform, it becomes this amazing service platform between the homeowner and the council. So that one's coming. And then finally, the net zero is actually the biggest driver of logbooks across Europe. And the idea is that everybody has a new digital EPC, BER is the Irish version, a digital EPC that can actually move data between the logbook and the EPC register in both directions. Every home should have a plan towards retrofitting for 2035, and that should be hosted in the logbook to the pan-European standard that we worked on with the EU, and that your logbook should be able to connect to the places that host information on what you've had built into your house. You may have seen in the last couple of weeks that both the policy team at Which magazine and the policy team at the Citizens Advice group have both come out with a absolute solid request that logbooks are given to every homeowner who's having an installation of low carbon tech. As in, if you get solar panels on your roof, you should be given a logbook. If you get a heat pump, you should be given a logbook. And the reason is that there's been some scathing reports on what's on all these installations, people not being given the right information, people not being given performance targets, etc. And they've all come to the conclusion that logbooks are the answer to this, which obviously we support. And we've been working on them on this target that in the short term, a place to mandate logbooks is if you have an installation of a low carbon tech, solar panels, heat pumps, EV chargers, batteries, etc., and those installations are held on the national database with Trustmark and are connected to our logbooks. So there's a lot going on outside of buying and selling. And the thing we're trying to stress there is that logbooks are getting out to the market. A lot of homeowners are getting logbooks when they're buying new homes, when they're selling their homes, they're getting logbooks on completion. They're using logbooks to set up and run projects. They're setting logbooks up to manage their utilities, to manage rental properties, and to prepare for net zero. And our message to the conveyancing industry is that the number of logbooks out in the market is finally beginning to explode. And the industry now needs to grapple with how they deal with logbooks, particularly logbooks coming back to market. and how they can take control of this phenomenon and use it to their own ends. So I'm very happy to take questions on that bit before we start looking at very specifically logbooks in the sales process. We've got some frequently asked questions that pops up. I think I've addressed the who owns a logbook. It is owned by the person who owns the property. It is a facet of the property. We would like logbooks to be listed in the TA6 form. At the moment, they are now already listed in the BASPI form as something that gets sold with the property, but they are very much a property of the homeowner. You can set a logbook up without an estate agent or conveyancer. There's a number of the logbook companies. You can go onto their website and set up a logbook if you want to run a building project. They become what we call a personal logbook, and they're not put onto the official register, which we'll talk about in just a minute. To go onto the National Register, a logbook has to be processed by an organisation that deals with verified ID. So at the moment, it's just logbooks set up by estate agents and conveyancers valid for a transaction. We are in the process of setting up a third validation route. So, for instance, my logbook at home is not on the National Register because I'm not planning to sell in the near future, but I've got a complete logbook. And we're setting up a service whereby I can actually have my logbook validated and put on the National Register. And people might say, why would I want to do that if I'm not selling? And the answer is I want access to all the data on the solar panels on my roof, and that data sits with Trustmark. And I want to be able to make sure that when I apply to Trustmark for that data, they can ping the National Register to see that my logbook is validated and provide me that data. And increasingly, lots of the data I talked about in that middle column needs my logbook to be validated. So yes, you can set up a logbook without an agent or conveyancer, but you will need it to be ID validated to conveyancer level standards if you want your logbook to be able to and to be on the register and therefore able to get data from all those different sources that we talked about. Can a homeowner add to a logbook? Yes, of course. I mean, by definition. Increasingly, we're looking to take that job off the homeowner just for a convenience thing. So, via API links to the land registry, to local authorities, etc., we will be able to increasingly populate this with live data automatically. But yes, we want homeowners to engage with their logbook, to load things up and add documentation as and when they do things. So absolutely yes. And then the question we get asked a lot, can we trust the data in a logbook? And the thing that we say to that is kind of a twofold answer. One is that increasingly the data you will be given out of a logbook has come from official sources, and it will be validated by being directly from an API from an official source. So we're merely passing on official data that's being collated in the logbook. Can you trust the logbook itself? That was the original reason why MHCLG pushed the RLBA to set up the self-regulatory process. And the self-regulatory process is there to ensure that you as a conveyancer or an estate agent can trust that the logbook is owned by the right person, and that the data in that logbook is accurate. And our self-regulatory process has got 4 bits to it. And this is something we've worked since 2018 on at the behest of MHCLG. And at the core is a data and security standard for a logbook. So if you are presented with an RLBA logbook, you know that that logbook has got data structured to conveyancing level data standards. And that's something that we've been doing all the way through, and that the security standards for that data are the equal, if not better, than the systems you're using within your conveyancing firm to hold and manage data. We also agreed with the MHCLG some functionality standards. And the 2 big ones in the functionality standards that are absolutely kind of core to the idea of what a logbook is that, number 1, it should be able to be passed between owners. And so that when somebody sells a property that has got a logbook, that the new owner takes that logbook and it becomes an asset of the property. And there's various different ways that happens between the different logbook providers, but the RLBA kind of oversees that standard by which a new person takes the logbook at the end of a transaction. When they bought a property, they become the owner of a logbook for that property. There is a code of conduct, which is kind of the standard stuff, a little bit like the COPSO code. So we have mechanisms for checking both financial and insurance statuses, etc., of the providers and the good standing of those providers. And then the big tool as part of our self-regulatory process is the National Logbook Register. And you see we talk about this a lot. It's live. As I say, we think there's about 100,000 logbooks on there at the moment. This is something that was built to enable estate agents and conveyancers to very quickly check at the beginning of setting up a new client if there is a logbook for that property, and if so, what's in it. And we'll talk about what's in it in just a minute. But this has become kind of a core tool in making sure that logbooks play their part in the battle against property fraud. And so the National Logbook Register it went live in 2020. We've updated it, improved it. There's other things arriving. And as I've mentioned, how does a logbook get onto the National Logbook Register? Currently, it can only be put onto the National Register if its ID, the owner's ID and property ID has been checked and validated by an estate agent or a conveyancer. As I said, we are adding this third function hopefully next year to enable people like me to get our logbooks up and registered on there without me having to move. But that is the core building block for us and our self-registry process.
Nigel, could I just amplify something you said? And it's
I get to drink coffee if you ask me questions.
Yeah, go on, have a couple of slurps, but put your mic off. Just to amplify what Nigel said about the data provenance, as part of the RLBA charter, any data or information within the logbook has a date stamp, time stamp, and a source. So when a conveyancer comes to view the data within that logbook, they can judge it on its merits dependent on the source, whether that be the homeowner, whether that be an online feed, or whether that be the previous conveyancing transaction.
Exactly. Very happy to take questions or jump onto the next bit. Any?
Nigel, we have a question. Thank you, Leslie. What is the Law Society's stance on this, please?
That's a good question. I mean, I would probably push the Law Society to tell you they're about to submit their consultation response, but I've seen the draft consultation response and they support logbooks. So that's what they are submitting into their consultation response. So. However, I'm sure that there's a second layer to that question, which is, do they support every single detail of what we're about to go through? And I think we need to wait to see the response to the consultation on the protocol changes. There are some debates, and we'll flag up some of the contentious issues as we go through the process in just a minute. So a good example, which we'll touch on in a minute, is can a conveyancer just ignore a logbook if they don't support them or believe in them? And at the moment, legally, the answer is yes. They are not yet mandated as part of the process. So the Law Society is expressing support. They're not demanding that all conveyancers do follow a new process. And so the things we're working with them on are about how to accommodate logbooks within the protocol, not about how to mandate them. I can see Stephen's got a hand up as
Stephen,
well.
I was just going to add to that, Nigel. The sea change is that Law Society are actually approaching us rather than us spending years trying to get an answer from them. So that's positive. Stephen, you have your hand up.
Thanks, Simon, and thanks very much, Nigel. It was really interesting intro to this. Interested to see that the EU have kind of moved on quite rapidly in the development of logbooks. And you mentioned that there are 3 EU member states where their use is mandated, and then also when you mentioned about for home buying and selling, the end target for that is a logbook created at every transaction. So do you see that as, this might be quite a big question for the beginning, so apologies, do you see that the only way of getting to that is through mandation, or do you think there are other ways that we can get to that point for home buying and selling?
Yeah, we don't believe that the UK needs a blanket mandation of logbooks. We believe that there are some specific areas where logbooks could and should be mandated. So, I think new build is an obvious one, because in the post-Grenfell world, the weighted data that is meant to be given to new owners has grown dramatically. The data that developers are meant to be publishing on things like renewability, energy use, etc., it creates a complex world for handover. So to me, I think what we will probably push for as an RLBA process, and again, this is me speaking, we haven't finalised our kind of thoughts on this yet, but there will be in our response to the consultation. I think that the RLBA will be in favour of some very specific mandation points, but in general, we support the MHCLG's aspiration just to remove roadblocks from this process. So I know that's a slightly vague answer, but by partial mandation, I mean things like we would like DESNZ to require every home that has solar panels, etc., to be required to have a logbook. We absolutely support the work that obviously that Simon's doing with MHCLG on giving logbooks out with homes bought under a Help to Buy program. So our thoughts are anywhere where a homeowner is being given significant advantage by government policy like Help to Buy, they should be required to support government policy by taking a logbook. And so there's 4 or 5 smaller mandation points which send an amazingly strong signal to the market that I think we're going to be putting into our consultation response. But I don't think we are advocating a mandation of logbooks across the piece.
That's great. Thanks, Nigel.
I think that's fair. There's a question from Richard. Hi, Richard. On the subject of standards, there's obviously a lot going on in the sector on standards, HBSG, DPMSG, MSG, etc. How does this fit in with that work with standards? For example, and I think this is the kind of question at the end, is it PDTF compatible, or will this be a separate standard?
Obviously, Sally's been heavily involved in that.
I was going to say.
So I'm very sure that's a question that's come across before. But my question really is, from an integration point of view, it'd be good for standards to converge, right, and for technology providers to be doing the job once. And my concern here is that we have standards that are not standard.
Yep. No, and we absolutely support that concern. We aren't creating a separate standard, I think is the thing to say. I would step back and say, in our work across those 5 different sectors, we are seeing lots of other government departments, and actually and 2 or 3 other parts of MHCLG, all working on data standards where we are constantly saying to each other, could you please talk across government on this? So for instance, the digitised planning team have been working on a new data standard, and we've been absolutely pushing them to talk to PDTF and the rest of MHCLG to talk to the lettings people who are now building a lettings database with a property database to support the lettings industry. And so one part of our work is to say exactly what you just said, back to government. Please, government, don't go creating 5 different standards for property data across different departments. Make sure that there is a single MHCLG and DESNZ team working on a single standard for property data. In the data that is being used in the transactional world, we absolutely support the PDTF process. And the thing we would flag up is that we are constrained by what our client companies have got. So I think PDTF is a very strong long-term aspiration for what this property industry will be, and logbooks will be there with it. In the short term, not a single one of the conveyancing companies that all of our members are working with use the PDTF standard. So we have to be working to the standards that our conveyancing companies have got. So I think between all the logbook companies, there's about 60 and 70 conveyancing companies who are already creating logbooks and sharing data with logbook companies. And they are all using the variations of the TA form data structure because that's what's currently in the market. So we won't be setting up a new data standard, and we certainly won't be driving or trying to compete with PDTF. We will be following on its adoption as the market adopts it. So, and I think that's probably the strongest we can get. But right now, we can only work to the data standards that we're encountering when we sign up a new conveyancer to either receive data from a logbook or to create logbooks on our behalf. So we are working to market. And when we talk about logbooks being able to export a data pack, those data packs are being exported to a standard that's not agreed by us. Oh, I mean, it's agreed by us, but it's not created by us. So, for instance, a logbook will be able to export an upfront information pack to the data standard that we're told to. Whatever the conveyancing industry finally agrees on the standardized upfront information data pack, we will export to that. Same thing in lettings and in net zero. We are just exporting data packs to a standard that we're told to by that industry sector.
If I could just say hello at this point, if I may, and thank you, Nigel and Simon. That's been really, really interesting to hear this overview. I'm Gemma, and I run a company called Movely, and we do digital sell ready. I know Nigel, we've spoken a number of times, and looking forward to catching up more. Just on
we're just about to start talking about your bit of the market, actually.
Great.
In the next section. So
great. Just on the PDTF standards, it's this kind of pull or push, I guess. What we are all trying to do, I think, is encourage the adoption of these central standards. So in a dream world, all of the logbook data would be able to flow into those central standards as well. So I guess my point is there's a decision to be made as to whether Logbook Association supports that approach and helps drive adoption of that open data standard, or waits for it to be mandated. And I would love to encourage the former where possible.
And Gemma, if you have ever seen us speak at conferences, we mention PDTF standards in every presentation we do. I would point out that the OPDA don't reciprocate and don't mention logbooks in any of their presentations, but we do mention your initiative and how we support it. So, however, we recognise in our humility that we aren't able to drive change in the market ourselves. We can only respond to what's out there. So we absolutely support the shift to PDTF. It won't be us driving it though. Not because we don't want to, but just because we are small. We recognise ourselves to be small peripheral players in this play. So absolutely, let's all move together to it. The people who need to move are the people who provide estate agent and conveyancer CRM, CMS systems, not us.
Yeah, I think you touched on. I mean, it's a big problem, right? And it's not any one party's. I'm not criticising anybody in the conversation, but it's right from the get-go, it's been a big problem to solve. And you touched on the point, and that is that you've got loads and loads of stakeholders without mandation, all storing data in different formats, in different tech stacks, and trying to converge that is like herding cats. Also, I think, we were involved with the home buying and selling group for quite some time, certainly in the early days. And, it's still evolving, would be my observation. And that's part of the other problem, is that, it's quite difficult to get people to lock into a standard when actually it's still evolving, because they're then having to go back and do rework as it evolves, which is inevitable. That's fine. It's about getting that critical mass and getting a stable schema that people can support long term. That's a slightly broader question / observation, I think.
As I say,
my question to you really was that you're not going to be doing it in a way that's conflicting, because that just exacerbates the problem. That just brings another standard to the table, right? Whereas from a software vendor point of view, to solve that problem, it would be better long term for the industry to settle on something consistent and more broadly compatible, accepting the challenges of getting everybody on board, etc., etc. But there does seem to be a lot more momentum than there have been in certainly the last 5 years. So that's encouraging.
And as I said at the beginning, we've got logbook companies which are live and are trading with conveyancers and estate agents. We have to work with the data standards they're currently using. And yes, we aspire for those to evolve into more of into the trust framework process. But right now, we have targets to sell logbooks, and we're doing it through conveyancers on their existing CRM systems, and that's the data we're working to. So we will move as the market moves. So.
But we will. I think in answer to your question, Gemma, originally the answer is the former. After all those words, and Rich, agree with everything you said. And yes, we want to work with you. We're not trying to create our own furrow on this.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Sorry, there's a question from Alan. Is there a standard or suggested cost for setting up a logbook? The answer is no. There are a number of logbook providers, all with slight outside of the core standard data with slightly different offerings. So there are different commercial pricings for that. And the second part of it, I think, who is going to fund it? Typically, the home buyer will pay for the logbook, and typically, if it's a conveyancer registration, that sum of money, which is a relatively small sum of money across the board, would be collected through the conveyancing billing process.
And for new build developers pays.
And for new build developer base.
So Simon and I'm going to drive Sally's bit there. We're going to have a look at the sales process and where logbooks fit in up front. So we're just going to go through this process now, kind of the sale, and then Simon will take over and drive what happens at the buyer's end. I just want to give you our thinking on both logbooks and upfront information packs and sales process. We support the government's drive to get home buyers to start compiling packs before they even bother on a estate agent. That someone should be sale ready the minute they walk out the door to go and see their estate agent. And so we absolutely support this drive for homeowners to create an upfront information pack, whatever it's called in the market. And they might do that through a standalone provider like Gemma's company Moverly, like Adore, Hippler, etc. There's a set of companies out there. They might have an existing logbook, or they might set up a logbook for the purpose. And in this pre-sale point, we're very conscious that there are a number, at least 3 different ways somebody might be setting up an upfront information pack. Now, clearly, all the estate agent and conveyancer CRMs, I'm assuming, will be setting up mechanisms to support their client companies in offering that as a service. And sometimes they'll be doing that in their software, sometimes they'll be doing that through partnership with one of those companies. But clearly that is one of the places that people will get their upfront information pack. But there are these other 2 sources. So there are, as I mentioned, there's a group of specialist upfront information companies and doing good stuff. And what we really need to understand is, if you are an estate agent or conveyancer, can your systems accept data from one of those companies? If a homeowner goes to one of those companies and sets up an upfront information pack in their thing, can you receive it in digital form? So these digitized UI packs, can they be absorbed in your system? And the same thing for those homeowners who've got a logbook and decide to sell and go into their logbook and press a button to launch an upfront information pack. They also are going to have a digitized upfront information pack that's being exported from a logbook and needs to be absorbed in the estate agent and conveyancer CRMs. And so this is a big question for the whole software infrastructure in our industry. Yes, I'm sure you're building software in your own system to allow this to happen, but can your clients who use your software, can they receive information from a seller who has done their own thing and set up an upfront information pack with a third-party provider? And this is one of those big questions that just doesn't seem to be being addressed in the industry. We would like MHCLG to get every single provider of estate agent or conveyancer CRMs into a room and start driving this debate, because too many of us, whether it's the upfront information specialists or the logbook companies, are having to build export PDF buttons into our systems because none of the estate agent and conveyancer CRMs can receive a data pack in any particular way. You can see why the companies like PEXA and Coadjute start to fill in, because their vision is that they will start to make those links between the providers. So that's a broader debate. But we do need estate agent conveyancer CRMs to be able to receive data from third parties. And just so you know, in the property logbook world, we will drive our clients to whichever estate agent and conveyancers can actually receive the data. So increasingly, there will be a small number of conveyancers who go early on this, and they will be getting all the work from the logbook providers, because you can press a button in your logbook and send your pack through to a conveyancer if it appears on the drop-down list in your logbook. So if you are a conveyancer or an estate agent, this is going to be one of those driving questions. Can I receive data from third-party UI providers into my software? And if not, why not? And so if you are an estate agent or conveyancer, you need to be ringing up your software provider and start having this debate if you want to receive data from a third party. And then the same thing, if you are an estate agent or conveyancer, can you set logbooks up? Can you take data out of your system and use it to set up a logbook? And if not, why not? So we do need estate agents and conveyancers to put some pressure on providers of CRM, CMS software, however you define it, such that they're able to play this game. And that's a debate we are very keen to have with people after this session. One of the questions we get asked a lot is, what's the difference between a logbook and an upfront information pack? It's the same thing, isn't it? We hear this all the time. And I just wanted to address this. A property logbook is intended to be an app or a service that lives with the homeowner through the life of their ownership of that property. It's like the app you get if you buy a Tesla. The app is part of the product. The data comes in live via API from all of those sources. Whereas a UI pack is intended to support a specific transaction at a specific date. And those two things are an important distinction. As I said earlier on, the logbooks are intended to support multiple user cases through the life of a property, helping people develop, do planning applications, manage building projects, do all sorts of things and grow over time using data from a variety of different sources. And as I mentioned, an upfront information pack is a block of data and documentation intended to support this particular transaction. And a lot of the data is specifically not intended to be used for a later one. Obviously, logbooks are initially presented to a homeowner as a companion app for the life of the home. UI packs, wherever they come from, are either a data feed or a PDF output. And of course, the other big difference is logbooks can output UI packs. We're designing logbooks to be able to press a button and spit out an upfront information pack to whoever wants it, as well as all the other things we're doing across those 5 sectors I mentioned. So, we are already working on automatic planning permission exports, energy reporting exports, licensing for lettings exports. So there's a set of things that can get spat out of a logbook to support various different kind of industry bodies. And as I mentioned earlier on, it's a digital asset that should be listed on the asset list if you sell the property. So that's the difference between logbooks and UI packs. Let's assume somebody's set up their UI packs in some form or another. They approach an estate agent, and this is where the stuff that we've been talking to the Law Society comes in. Our expectation in this new world is both estate agent and conveyancer will be able to check the National Logbook Register and ask, is there a logbook? And that can be done in a microsecond through an API connection to the National Logbook Register. And also, what you'll see in a minute is that the Logbook Register also can tell you if there is an upfront information pack or a sales information pack. It will be able to flag that up. And then our objective is that the estate agent can just click a button in their CRM and import it from the logbook automatically. And this is something we're working on at the minute. But first off, we need every CMS CRM provider in the country to be building this API ping to the Logbook Register so that check can take place as part of the data setup. You'll see this is a snapshot from a result. This is one of yours, Simon, isn't it? Logbook, yeah, Kimberley Road.
Nice to see, yeah.
Yeah, so the Logbook Register, you can go and we can do demos. There is a web front end where we can demo it working, but it's actually intended to be integrated via API with a CMS. It will tell you if there is a logbook. It will tell you who the provider is. You can search it by postcode or by UPRN, and it will also tell, as you can see down at the bottom, what data packs are available. And obviously, in this context, for buying and selling, the key one is has it got a sales information pack, an upfront information pack, however you want to call it. So that information is there, and we're pushing to get this integrated with every single CRM, so everybody is checking, is there a register? I saw a lovely demo from View My Chain a couple of weeks ago where their integration, they've done a really nice video explaining how their integration works and the data they're pulling through from the National Register into their system. What does an estate agent or a conveyancer need to do? You need to set up an account with the National Logbook Register. You can go in and check manually. You can go in and just type in an address into the manual interface. But what we really want is for your CRM. So if you are an estate agent or conveyancer, you need to ring your CRM provider and say, does your system provide an API link to the National Logbook Register? Because we want to be checking that in our data set. So that's the CRM. And then when the sales process moves towards the conveyancer, again, same process really. We're expecting conveyancers to do the same thing, to be checking the register and to be able to pull data through from the logbook into the CRM. And that, there are some questions obviously that is raised by that, which we'll touch on in just a minute. Here we go. Yeah, so Sally, who is, as we said, is a conveyancer, has been soliciting FAQs and questions on this. And these are the questions we have, but feel free at this point to throw more questions into the mix or put your hand up or ever. I'll do these just in line. We're going to send a document out with all these answers written down. We've accumulated the kind of the relevant answers. If I search the register and there's already a logbook, how do I get access to it? Right now, there's a button click and you contact the owner.
Provider,
so, yeah. But you can contact the provider, but it has to be the homeowner gives you access to the logbook because it's their property. So it should be your client. If you are a buyer and you want to see a seller's logbook, you need to ask their conveyancer. So we are not trying to get into the process by which information flows between a seller's conveyancer and a buyer's conveyancer. What happens if it's a probate sale? How do the executors get access to the logbook? Same thing through the conveyancing client, who then logbook companies in our standard have got a system of enabling probate executors to have access to a logbook on proof of ID and proof of probate. What happens if there's a logbook on the register? My client knows nothing about it. Now, this is an interesting one. So if this has happened, what happens if there was a logbook on the register, but my client knows nothing about it? What's probably happened here is that the logbook was set up at the end of a transaction, and then that home gets sold again, and both the client and their conveyancer ignore the logbook and in the process, and the new owner wasn't told there was a logbook when they bought it. Now, one of the things we're doing, we're working with Land Registry on this around notifications. And what we're doing is we're building into the standard RLBA data structure, functionality structure, a notification so that if a conveyancer ignores the presence of a logbook in a sale and the new owner buys that property unaware that there is a logbook, it will trigger a notification via the Land Registry into the logbook company. And then the logbook company will pursue it and let that homeowner know there is a logbook and there's been a fault in the process. So technically, whilst the Law Society is not mandating the use of logbooks in the process, at the moment, legally, a conveyancer can ignore the presence of a logbook in their process, but it will start flagging notifications that their client eventually will get a notification from the logbook company saying, you haven't been given a logbook you were meant to be given in that transaction. So, and that's something that we're just waiting for the final uptakes of the Land Reg notification system for that to start happening. But that we will catch that on the loop afterwards. What will be in the logbook that the estate agent might need? Interesting question, whether there's going to be a marketing level pack and a conveyancing level pack as part of the output. There is a meeting on the 20th between all of the upfront information companies in the UK to debate that point. Clearly, the very minimum that can come out of a logbook is the same as in the minimum of an upfront information product. It will be the material information, etc. If an estate agent wants the full conveyancing pack, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't have it. But as I say, the only stuff that's in a logbook that an estate agent and conveyancer needs to worry about at this stage is there a sales information pack, an upfront information pack, and can they have it? See, if there's no logbook on the register, should an estate agent set one up? There's an increasing number of estate agents setting logbooks up as a way of dealing with the upfront information challenge. I mean, my broad comment is that estate agents should be encouraging digital upfront information in any form. Yes, it would be nice if they're using logbooks, but we just need them to encourage homeowners to be setting up digital information packs in some form or another. The bottom one there, what happens if my client has a logbook but it's not on the register? This is where, if you're an estate agent or conveyancer, you can validate their logbook. Once you've done the KYC AML checks and the ID checks therein, you're able then to contact the provider and validate their logbook and have it added to the register. And if there's a logbook, should I look in it? This is one we've been going back and forth with the Law Society on quite a lot. Some conveyancers are worried that if they open up a logbook, they will suddenly be required to read everything that's in it and be exposed to what's in there. Our thoughts on this are that has a very specific legal obligation to read certain things, and that those things are included in the conveyancing, the upfront information pack, and they should focus on that. We are keen that buyers who are committed buyers are encouraged to look in the logbook for other reasons, but I'm very conscious that the conveyancing industry is nervous about being exposed to far more information than they think, and that their clients will expect them to have opened it up and read it. I would suggest you can deal with that with your own clients' T's and C's. You tell them exactly what you're being paid for, and only that. But if they want to look in a logbook, you as a conveyancer can arrange access for it.
Yeah, I think this is one where it would have been useful to have Sally, but I mean, my view on it is if it's a conveyancer registered logbook, then the conveyancer will have only put in the logbook what was relevant the previous time round. So there shouldn't be anything that's frightening for a new set of eyes.
Do you have any questions at that stage? Am I handing over to you at this point, Simon?
I'm not sure. I don't know what the next one is. Oh, it is me. It is me.
It is you, yeah.
It is me, right? Well, I'm conscious we've had an hour so far, so I'll try and make this as high level as possible. But Simon Lumb, Director of National Deeds Depository, a property logbook company, and like Nigel, a founder member of the RLBA. I think you're driving the slides as well, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just do a high level, because there's a fair amount of kind of rinse and repeat on the process, although we're looking at this from a buying perspective here. And I'll say ordinarily, because there are different approaches, but in the pure kind of conveyancing setup world, ordinarily, as part of a client questionnaire or the onboarding process, a conveyancing firm will either strongly recommend or mandate the registration of a logbook for the buyer at completion of the process. Obviously, the detail will be put on the case management system, and a billing line will be there for the account at between exchange and completion. As it says there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. You can see we've rehearsed this. If there's a sales info pack, the conveyancer CRM can pull the data into its system. If there's a logbook, then on request, the CRM system will pull the relevant data in. I'll move on, Nigel. If there is no existing logbook, which in the majority of cases will be the norm for the moment, a new one can be set up, taking essentially the relevant data up to completion from the client's, the conveyancer's CRM system. The new owners, I said owners because there might be more than one owner registered for the logbook with their own individual access. Interestingly, certainly we see it, and I believe Nigel's company does as well, is conveyancers are starting to understand about the kind of handover of logbooks, through a potential kind of probate situation. And where there are elderly buyers, oftentimes you'll see a second or third name and contact detail for a son or daughter or whatever, so there's some kind of continuity of data in the event of the death of the owner. The logbook on completion is added to the National Register, and that is part of the logbook provider service. So it's not something that the conveyancing firm actively does. It's automated on registration by the logbook provider.
And where a conveyancer has a relationship with a logbook provider, we've got integrations now. I think both Simon's company and my company can talk about the integrations we've done where conveyancers are just pushing a button in their system and it's automatically launching a logbook, either in NDD, Simon's company, Chimni, mine, and it's both automatically setting up the logbook, populating it with documents from the matter folder, and doing the logbook registration as part of the integration. So.
It's fair to say at the moment, the majority, certainly from an NDD perspective, and I think from a Chimni as well, Nigel, the majority of logbooks are registered in at best, a semi-automated way. We have a few integrations. Hopefully, we will start to see the CRM companies coming to us and actually looking to add functionality to their systems, because ultimately it makes life easier and more accurate for all involved.
Yep. And obviously that register we've talked about a few times. So for a conveyancer to be creating logbooks at the end of a transaction, they need a relationship with the logbook company. And this is one of those strange things about the RLBA. We are all competitive to a certain extent. So, our broad recommendation from the RLBA here is if you are a conveyancing company, you need to meet a few logbook companies. You should be running procurement sessions where you get us all in to do a show and tell, and to work out who you want to work with. So and probably if you're in the conveyancing industry, you've probably heard from one of us knocking on the door, trying to build these relationships. So that's the absolute key bit. The other stuff, checking the logbook register to see if there is a logbook in place, can be done through APIs and just an account with the RLBA. But if you want to set up logbooks, you need a relationship directly with the logbook company, and that's the distinction.
Nigel said we're competitive companies, and it's so competitive that he's talking over my slides, but I thought he did a good job. Should we move on to the next one?
Yeah. Last burst of questions, isn't it? So, yeah.
Right, so here's some of the frequently asked questions. I don't know whether I'll go through them all, but if I'm acting for a buyer, what if the logbook for the sale with a provider I don't recommend? Can I set up another logbook after completion with my preferred supplier? Yes, of course you can. What if my client doesn't want a logbook? Well, at the moment, there's nothing that compels them to have a logbook, is the truthful answer. Do home buyers have to pay for the logbook? Yes. The exception would be first time round on a new build, the developer would pay for the logbook, and it's something actually that they've been doing for a while, although they possibly haven't been called logbooks. They've been kind of handover packs, whether they be lever arch files with manuals on how to operate the dishwasher, etc. But there's a history of them, the developer, incurring the cost for that. Who is responsible for changing the ownership of the logbook on completion? That would really be the role of the conveyancer, because the conveyancer is obviously in control of the whole ID process. So that's something that is outside of the remit of the logbook provider. In the bottom corner, I've got what are the benefits of a logbook for the buyer and what are the benefits of a logbook for the conveyancers, because we've talked a lot about process, but it's probably good and about time to talk about just briefly some of the highlight benefits. Now, we've got a very happy couple there, and they're very happy because they've just taken ownership of a logbook, and they so happen to have taken ownership of a house as well. So what does a logbook do for a buyer? In simple terms, it solves a document problem. It's an aggregated filing system of all the important data around the property they've just purchased. It's also a digital template, as Nigel alluded to earlier, where documents and information can be uploaded and filed within the logbook through their years of ownership, as well as an increasing number of online data feeds that will come down the line, as you say, number two. I think the other thing is the logbook is preparing the owner for the next sale, in the sense that they will have a lot of aggregated information. They'll be able to produce upfront information from logbook data, and basically are in a sale and partially legally ready state. So when it comes to selling, because from buying being the most important milestone, the next important milestone is selling, they're well positioned with all the data to be available for a quicker and more robust and coherent sale. In terms of the building property value with the data, it's a little bit like, I guess, the kind of car analogy, in the sense that anybody with a logbook and a full audit of the history of the house, what's been done to the house, and all the documentation to back it up, it would position itself far better against a similar property that perhaps didn't have that provenance of documentation. The last one is an interesting one, in the sense that the data that is aggregated actually lends itself to stuff coming down the line around kind of AI interrogation of data and anything and reporting that can kind of come out of that. So in summary, the logbook becomes very much a digital companion. It's available to receive data and actually export data at the appropriate point in the journey. And that could even be halfway house of something like actually applying for a remortgage or whatever. All the data is available. Move on. And this is the one for the conveyancing community. Why should a conveyancer provide logbooks? Well, okay. First of all, there is a logbook registration fee available for registering your client with the logbook on completion. The logbook is part of a post-completion process, and the logbook adds an element of efficiency to that process because everything is aggregated into a digital template and does away with older systems of packaging up documents and sending them through, or emailing through PDFs, or whatever different conveyancing firms may do at the completion of a purchase. And I think this is the next one is a kind of crucial one that perhaps is slightly overlooked. Historically, conveyancing firms are very poor at continuing a relationship beyond completion. So it's very much a linear transaction where there's a start and there's an end. The end is hopefully with a successful completion and handing the keys over to the buyer for that property. But the logbook creates this post-completion and ongoing relationship with the buyer in a low profile way of just communicating on an annual or twice yearly basis, just to remind the owner of the value of the logbook and the need to keep it updated with stuff that may have been done to that property. What the logbook providers do in various cases is invite that communication to be, invite the conveyancer in that communication, and it's just that subliminal message to remind them of who their conveyancer was, and maybe things like, have you updated your will, etc., etc., and even actually reminding them that they may actually offer other services, because buyers tend to look at a law firm and just see them as a conveyancer. They buy and sell property, but it could well be a multi-service firm who do a whole raft of other things, and hopefully increase additional business.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, and I'll run through the others. The ongoing relationship through the logbook should increase client retention rate. No lawyer, if they're being honest, can tell you what their retention rate is, because they only really know when the client comes back in X years' time. And as I said earlier, there will be an increase in client referrals and cross sales. And really, in summary, it creates a new way of working and creates that partnership between the logbook provider, the conveyancing firm, and the homeowner throughout the lifetime of their ownership of that property.
So broadly, I think that's everything. So there's a few kind of takeaway things which we would like conveyancers and the CRM companies to be doing. One is to engage with the National Logbook Register, just at the very minimum, checking to see if there was a logbook as part of the process. Like View My Past just announced, that's a very simple API that draws back a couple of very useful bits of data. More broadly, particularly if you're an estate agent or conveyancer, make sure that your system can receive sales information pack, upfront information pack, whatever you want to call it, in data form. And that's a plea from all of the third-party providers of these packs, whether it's the standalone upfront information companies or the logbook companies. We need to start moving data into this beginning of the system as well as out at the back. And our message to all the conveyancing companies is engage with the providers. So there's a list on the RLBA website. I'm sure you'll be more badgered by us over the next few weeks anyway, but make sure that you are aware of the companies out there who can partner with you in this world of logbooks. And that's everything we wanted to talk about today. Very happy to take more questions if there are live questions out there. I shall share.
We plan to finish. We plan to finish with 15 minutes to go. So well done, Nigel.
Well, it depends if anyone's got any questions. That's
hold on. There's I've just seen
the chat.
I've just seen blatant pug, but I don't know if that means blatant plug.
Well, that's what is that, Alan?
Yes. So, yeah. Alan, do you want to do your blatant plug?
Yes, my typing is not as good as my surveying, I think. But thank you. Yes, I mean, we Skyline, which is my company, we're a software survey writing software business. We're surveyors ourselves as well. We recently created an entirely new sort of survey product, which was built really to support this kind of initiative. So it's a survey of the property, but also it includes all the material information, the physical material information that the estate agents and conveyancers are going to need about the property. And that's all wrapped into a seller commission survey. It can be relied upon by the buyer and would sit extremely well within a logbook because it provides that sort of physical information about the property, can sit there and help inform future sales as well. So we're very happy to work with logbook companies and others who might be interested in how this can help facilitate the whole process. We're all looking at more upfront information, and we do have the mechanism to deliver it across the country as well. So it's a practical proposition. So I put my email address in there. Thank you for the opportunity for my plug.
Thanks, Alan.
My plug.
Do we have any other questions? Well, if we don't have any questions, I'll repeat what I said at the beginning. We've created a recording of this session, which we will be making available to people. So I will be sending the link out to everybody. So please pass it on as much as you can, and to get everybody to see it. Obviously, the RLBA is always very happy to turn up at your conferences and do a kind of a shortened version of that, should you feel the need. And also, all of our individual emails are available on the RLBA website. If you've got questions or come through, there's an RLBA Q&A place on the RLBA website. And there's also somewhere you can sign up for regular RLBA updates on what we're doing. As I mentioned at the beginning, we will be sending out in a kind of readable document form a response to the consultation. And so you'll see what we're feeding back to MHCLG, which will contain some of the things we've talked about. And we'll also publish our response to the Law Society consultation on changes to the protocol, so you can see what we've asked for within that. And if there's no questions,
Nigel, I just wanted to pick up and answer. I think it's Philippa in the chat about. Ongoing communications, and thanks. It's a good point, and we're aware of that. And actually, there is homeowner consent for. If there is no homeowner consent given, then that is not carried through. But certainly, in my experience, in the overwhelming majority of cases, the homeowner provides consent for ongoing communication. But it's a good point, and thank you for making it.
And I've just seen Alexandra's question at the bottom.
Right, yep.
About LCT readiness. Now, I'm interpreting that as low carbon tech readiness. Tech, is a home ready for being able to do that? And I'm guessing that's the kind of question that's things like, will the electricity feed allow you to put heat pumps, battery and solar and things? So is there a single phase versus a 3-phase? Those kind of things. We're hoping so. There is a data standard we've been working on for a while, which we call the Enhanced Property Data Set, which is about construction information. And we're just debating whether to include this as a standard in the RLBA property data spec. And it's based on the RDSAP EPC data structure, which I know is already in PDTF, which is good. And so we're looking at whether we can include that within the standard logbook structure, which will then include information within there about LCT readiness. So not yet would be my short answer to your question, Alexandra, but we're hoping to include data structures within the logbook standard to make sure that that does get included. And just to let people know, Alexandra is from an organisation called the Energy Systems Catapult, which is a government-funded think tank and innovation centre looking at net zero. And they have also written various things in the last couple of years supporting and endorsing the role of logbooks in various parts of the net zero market. Well, if there's no more questions, I think we've covered everything we wanted to cover. And as I say, we will send out both the links and the documentation at the end of the session. So huge thank you for those of you who stayed to the end. It was great, and thank you for all the questions. And we look forward to seeing you out in the market as logbooks and other information packs roll out in this new digital world we're playing in.
Yeah, thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it. And again, as Nigel said, thanks for the questions. We certainly got something out of it. I hope you did. Thank you very much indeed.